Good afternoon. I'm Kate Bulkley. Welcome to this MIPCube session. We are talking about driving community to your content, and we have a person running out giving this clicker. That's important. Good, good. We're all ready now. I'm Kate Bulkley. I'm a media journalist. I'm based in the UK. I write about the media. I comment on the media. My Twitter handle is @KateComments. And I'm going to be basically running these next two sessions, which I think are going to be really interesting. This one's about driving community to your content. We've got two speakers they're each going to have a presentation. Then we're going to have a little bit of discussion and hopefully open up to you as well. That's the plan. So I'm going to introduce our first one, and he will give us a little talk, and then I'll do our second one. Basically, creating community around your content. We're in a device-rich world. What does this mean for content, and what does it mean for community? That's what we're after here. So our first speaker is Matt Heiman. He is the founder and CEO of Diagonal View. Since 2008, Diagonal View has been the European leader in digital video production. They produce over 70 YouTube channels. They reach over 10% of the US online viewing population every month. So clearly, Matt knows how to make online video. Let's please welcome Matt Heiman.
Hello. So yeah, some big stats there. In terms of what we do, we make video for the internet. That's part one. And part two is we try and actually make video that people watch. And the trick of that, which is really helpful, is people actually tell us what they want to watch. And so that's really the objective of today's conversation, is that we're not just a production company, we're a listening company. And that really starts a cycle then of making, listening, and actually getting that community to participate in the content is the next step, and then hopefully reaching that objective where the community itself becomes part of the curation and the handover between what we see as a very live conversation with the audience and a dead conversation, which happens maybe in other panels in other parts of the building that work with dead terminals. We call this product, which is, whether it's a product or a process, you can debate, and we can talk about that as much as you might like, that basically, it's called the AMP, A-M-P, makes basically content louder. We thought it'd be a fun, sort of catchy three-letter name, because technology companies always need to have products that have a three-letter name. And the net of it is, we looked at YouTube as a specific platform, but we also produce content for MSN and Yahoo and AOL, amongst others. And we thought, how do we make this content actually even more relevant? If we're truly content producers, and that's our heartbeat, we don't sell ads, we don't have our own websites, what are we going to really gain in terms of valuable IP to make our content better each day? More importantly, when we look at the internet, how do we think about using all of the power of the internet successfully to make content? Unless you're listening and iterating on a daily basis, it's impossible to keep up with the pace of feedback. And if you're not keeping up with the pace of feedback and producing in real time, i.e. ideally on a daily iteration, then your competition will be, and the audience will go to that channel. It's really just that simple. So getting this process right is critical to the company. It took 4 years of refinement to get to this point, but we weren't just sitting there for 4 years thinking and scratching our heads. And in a relatively short period of time, we were very, very strong at social content on a platform as old as MySpace, where we were channels 1, 2, and 3 on that platform. At the time, that would have been ahead of the brands like The Simpsons or The Family Guy. So we were creating this content, which was primarily social content, and we can get to some examples in a moment, and outperforming some of the biggest media brands in America on a platform owned by their parent company. We really realized that that social platform was providing us with information to then make better content on a daily basis, whereas they were using old stuff, old episodes, old series to kind of live off the back of a franchise, whereas we were creating franchises. So what do we really do? In terms of why you've come to this room, other than to seek a dark place for half an hour and potentially have a nap, which is absolutely okay by me. It's been a long conference already. We start with programming, and we really think that if you're going to try and amplify anything, i.e. AMP, then the best thing to do is to start with really good content. But to start with really good content, the first off the screen is actually an egoless approach to say, I'm not a big school producer, I don't have a giant ego, I try to work on my weight and not have a big belly. All of those things seem to go hand in hand. I don't know why, but they seem to. So what we try to do is stay nimble, and in doing that, take an egoless approach and a thinner approach to making content. And by thinner, I don't just mean no belly, I mean actually saying, how are we going to make stuff that if it is ripped up, torn up after 3 episodes, did it really cost us very much? No. On the other hand, did it cost our ego very much? No. So what we really want to do is stay nimble. And when we talked about those 70 channels, we actually only have 8 to 10 channels live in production at any one time. And what we're doing is basically taking our foot off and foot on many pedals over the course of kind of production. And the way we do that is we really moderate audience demand. So for example, right now, a channel that we're very close to launching has to do with royalty. And so because Kate Middleton is pregnant, it becomes an even bigger issue. It's always an issue, the royals are always in the press, but because it's even more pressing issue, we've dedicated more resource to it. So that's just a very quick one-off example. That could be played out many, many times across many, many channels, but also many pieces of content. Note as well, we don't call it the Kate Middleton channel, we call it royalty. So there's flexibility within the genre and within the channel itself to say, let's keep the channel, let's keep the audience, but there's flexibility within it. If Harry does something, there's room for him to be a bad boy while Kate is also pregnant. So I don't know if that might happen. It seems to every time we kind of need a bit of spice in our royal life. Just moving along here, of course it needs to be search engine optimized. There are many companies down in the basement of this organization who can, or this conference, who can search engine optimize your content. We say it's a bit like putting your air in your tires and trying to win the Tour de France. It just has to be done. It doesn't show any skill. It's easy to do. The internet's been around for a while, and so has SEO. But it's a necessary thing for a complete slide. We edit and brand the content. So again, that final kind of, if you imagine 10% in terms of editorial, what makes the content special, catchy? Is there a question in the title? What's going to basically be the hooks of making stuff? And I'll go into that in a little bit more detail later on. In terms of syndication, we press a button that goes to many platforms. And then most critically, we have a team of 12 to 14 full-time hires who work actually 24/7 this time of year, because some of our partners are involved in sport. And it's a critical time for sports like football, and they actually report back to the producers what's winning. Unfortunately, we can't affect the scores of football, or else we'd be in a separate business, maybe based in the Bahamas. In point 2 of the 7 steps of channel success is we engage the community, and we make content that kind of either asks a question or is maybe on the edge of a little bit controversial, without being overtly controversial, because you don't want to be too obvious. So it's not in a patronizing way. And we're starting to feel like we're shifting from a scientific data-based company, which we very much were in the first 3 slides. This is where the art of production starts to come in. And this is really where us as a business starts to work with producers, i.e. TV producers, content producers. Even, we work with Rio Ferdinand, who's quite a creative guy, and we manage his video on YouTube, all the way to large production companies and broadcasters. And this piece is really where our DNA comes through in strength in that boardroom. We start from a creative and product perspective, and then we think through audience. And so this is really where we start to hand over. And you can see on the graph a lot of jaggedy lines all going upwards and to the right. Migrating audience, and this is kind of interesting, and it's something that's played out specifically in the last 18 months, is channels on YouTube but other platforms as well have started to share audience and like each other's content, et cetera, et cetera. And these are kind of little calls to action that there's a moment in time where this is really popular, and I believe needs to be done with some elegance, rather than just trying to bosh together 2 channels and say, hey, they love each other, even if one is Manchester United and the other one's Chelsea. Yeah, sure, they're both football, but their fan bases are quite different. So getting those kind of migrated audiences, one of those techniques, a sub-technique, is called a collaboration, where you actually make content together. And so what you have is 2 communities meeting. And again, if you do it in a clever way, the audience goes quite well. An example would be Messi versus Ronaldo. So we created a clip, and it's now the Messi versus Ronaldo clip. It says 13 million views. It doesn't have anywhere near that. It's tens of millions of views now, and if you type Messi versus Ronaldo into the internet, this clip will come up. We don't own the rights. We don't have any specific rights on this, but what we've done is intersect ourselves with a great piece of content into a conversation that asks the community for an opinion. suddenly they're building social currency, because when you participate and offer that opinion, your social currency builds. So if you have a bunch of Messi fans, you discover this clip and there's 14 million people saying, no, I love Ronaldo, suddenly the Messi pals start to curate around it and say, actually, we love Messi, and here's why the side of that clip is so much more interesting than the Ronaldo side. The Ronaldo side then comes in, et cetera, et cetera. Interesting statistically, we thought that would happen, and statistically now we have the numbers to back it up. The Ronaldo territories or parts around the world are big Ronaldo supporters, and the Messi territories are big Messi supporters, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. This is one single version of what we basically walk into the room with a producer of a deck of about 20 lessons learned in the past 4 years of calls to action, creative, basically creative techniques that build that audience participation. And we think by starting with content, it frankly makes our AMP job easier, because we're selling good stuff to an audience that already wants to participate with it. In terms of converting views to subscribers, once you have people participating and they're on the hook and they're commenting, getting a subscribe is easy. Once they've subscribed, then they're starting to get alerted. Once we see that they've subscribed, we know how to make more stuff for that specific audience. So it becomes self-fulfilling. It all sounds very, very easy. And earlier on, basically, I was just saying pay more attention was kind of the net of this. I've taken 8 minutes to get to the punchline. Finally, the seventh and final, and I've run over about 60 seconds with all this, is to leverage YouTube or MSN or others as a network. So this is actually a wonderful clip that the All-Time Tens team, which is a channel we built from nothing. We invented the brand, and now it's one of the bigger brands, certainly in Europe, is a channel that it builds a top 10s list 3 times a week. And in this case, it discovered 3 underloved YouTube channels. So being the creative and lovely spirits that they are, they got these channels to get some content from it, each channel, and basically shared the love from the All-Time Tens channel, which is quite successful and big, with their hundreds of thousands of viewers, and they created over 100,000 subscribers for these 10 underloved channels in under 72 hours. So we're into sharing love as well. And this is something that's very different than television, and one of our co-founders used to work with LAG quite actively, and he said, you know, Matt, you're sharing love. It's so on television, which kind of made me laugh coming to this conference. And then the reward is that All-Time Tens gets loved back from those other 10 channels, which is easy to do on the internet, difficult to do on television. So finally, in summary, first we make good content. We encourage our partners to start there. Then we manage it well. So if we're working with a large producer who says, hang on, in a relationship, we'd like to make stuff, but we'd like Diagonal View to manage that channel for us, it really becomes a creative as well as community conversation. We listen to the audience, feed that back to our producer, editor, partner, or use it in-house if we're making the content, and then we convert that community subscribers, and there's a bunch of online tools that then turn subscribers into a community, and advertisers love a community.
Great. Great. Well, now you know how to do it all, right? And they can just, you know, that's it. You just go there and you do those 7 steps. Bob's your uncle, you've got a great channel.
Or they could email me and we can charge them for it.
Okay. Let's go on to our next speaker. Mark, are you going to stand up, or are you fine? You're fine. Okay. Mark Sorrell, he's from Hide&Seek. He's actually the development director of Hide&Seek. He is an ex-TV World guy. He tells me he's 10 years doing things like Call TV. He worked at Screen Pop, which is part of Fremantle Media. He also worked at something else. This is a games guy, games company. Because even when he was working in TV, he was doing a lot to do with games. So you're going to talk a little bit, I think, about how to create community. So would you please welcome Mark Sorrell?
Yeah,
something like that. And what is this dog?
It's just looks like me, I guess. It's a dog wearing a dog hat, and I'm like a man trapped in a man's body. That's how I feel like that dog. So I'm Mark Sorrell, development director at Hide&Seek. We are a games company, game design studio that specialise in putting games in new and unusual places, creating new kinds of games, doing new and interesting things with games. I've spent the last 10 years, as has been said, being a games guy at various TV companies, trying to explain games to TV people with occasionally something that looked a little bit like success. I've basically been asked, I guess, to try and explain why games are relevant to TV people and what lessons you can learn. It's a $60 billion industry, and I have 6 minutes and 7 seconds to explain the relevance of it to you, so I apologise if this is a bit scattergun to begin with. What does this even mean, driving community to your content? I guess get some buses. That would be my initial way of doing that. There's a lot of things that games... There's 2 questions. How games are made and what games are. Now, you can learn a lot from how games are made. And in fact, I'd suggest that the way that games are made and the way that the, I forgot the name of your product already, but AMP, the way that AMP is, AMP, I remember it's called AMP. The way that AMP works is extremely similar. I'll get to that later though. First, I want to talk about a bit what games are, what you can take from them, what you can't. And I think it's important very much in these things to point out things you shouldn't do as well as things you should. It's just like TV. Are games important? Yes, of course they are. Angry Birds, 1 billion downloads in May last year. They have their own theme park. In Finland, the Angry Birds own brand Coke outsells Coke in Finnish supermarkets, which is completely bonkers, but true. I'm not making, you don't stop looking at me like that. Not making that up, really not making that up. But the way that you drive people to a game in the first place, the way you acquire customers to a game, is extremely similar to the way that you're going to acquire customers to internet video specifically, certainly. Everything that he just said is what he said is the very quick and easy summation of how games get content in the first place, that get users in the first place. There's a lot more about that idea of you syndicating stuff almost and getting connections between companies, between games, between titles. If you like this, you like this. That kind of thing happens a lot more, I think, and is a bit more developed perhaps than it is in online video. But the concept is exactly the same and massively important. And the other way that you get people to your game in the first place is you buy them. You just pay money to acquire them through advertising like you would with anything else. If you know it's an ROI. It's really, really, really simple stuff. Games, this is Call of Duty. I'm obliged again whilst talking about how big games are. $1 billion in 15 days this game made, which is amazing. It takes over the televisions of the nation when it's released. But it would make the worst television show in the world. It's just a big brown roller coaster with lots of explosions, bangs, and people throwing blood over you.
Which one is this? Sorry.
This is Call of Duty.
This is GE.
Call of Duty that you're
Call
watching.
of-
Call of
Call
Duty or Battlefield. This
Right.
is actually Call of Duty. They're almost indistinguishable. This is the titan of video gaming at the moment.
Yeah.
Like I say, it
There's
made
Call
$1
of Duty,
billion.
Mortal Kombat, there's a lot of them. But anyway.
Yeah,
okay.
Mortal Kombat, totally different.
Right.
Well, it's still killing people. That's the thing. It's like these things are almost entirely incomprehensible, just brown mush of blood and horror. And it's like disgusting if you don't know what's going on, which most people don't. If you do know what's going on, it's actually worse because you're just watching a man murder thousands of people while they laugh maniacally. It's awful. But anyway, there's a lot of things that the games aren't like TV in terms of the fact that you can't sit, or everyone can't sit down together and watch someone play Call of Duty. It would be nonsense. But if you're sat there on your own, you're playing it, it's great. The connection between the player and the screen, very important, but what's going on in the rest of the room is almost irrelevant. Whereas TV, of course, excellent at getting everyone together. So creating a community in a room, TV is miles better. What games are much better at, I would suggest, and what something I'm not sure how much you can actually learn from this, but you can learn that you can't do this without a game, at least, is keeping people there. Retention. Games are amazingly good at retention. At the end of the day, a TV show is on for however long it's on for. Video clip on for however long it's on for. On internet video is a little bit different insofar as you can go, I want another and another and another and another and another, and you can probably keep watching videos about Lionel Messi. Is that his name? Wow. I'm impressed with myself for remembering that. For like 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 hours in a row, quite easily, I'd have thought so. It would be best to do that, yeah. But what games are truly excellent at is the fact that they are built on loops and retention, and you coming back and you doing the same thing over and over and over again. There are some TV shows people are happy to watch over and over and over again. There come kinds of video that people are willing to watch over and over again. But generally speaking, the whole point of the game is that you perform an action repeatedly in order to become better at doing it. The pursuit of mastery is a lot of what games are about. So when you're creating a community around a game, what you're really trying to do is create a community of people who are in some kind of like, often very casual and friendly competition, but they're in competition. Whereas that's something that isn't really true of television and couldn't really be true of television, I wouldn't have thought, unless, again, as the online video world is showing us, you're asking them a question in the first place, where they're not competing about how good they are, but they're certainly competing in what their answer might be. So once again, you're doing it right. I'm basically saying do what he said. That's the entire point of my talk here. With the, what were you high-fiving? Was just with the thing that another thing again, which is reflecting back on what you just said, is that games leave room for the player. They have to. I mean, a lot of games are story-based and have strong story elements to them, but even so, they don't just sit down and go, here's a story, shut up, we don't care. Games are about listening and about getting you to do your bit. So that idea that you can, I think this is also true, to be fair, of a lot of great TV shows leave room for the viewer to sort of insert themselves into it. There's while it is just an amusing photograph, that is actually a picture from Star Trek Next Generation. which I think is entirely true of. Star Trek was one of the first TV shows, quite possibly, to create that kind of sense of fan fiction, that people were so into the world that had been created that they were willing to just make stuff up and write it down and send it to each other, talking about how they wanted to be part of it. If you're talking about creating a community, Star Trek absolutely owns everything there is, as far as I can think of. They have conventions. People get together like this and have rooms like this full of people talking about how much they want to either be or fight or have sex with a man in that ball pit. So that sort of finding a place where people can imagine themselves and put themselves, rather than just watching casually, but watching from inside out, is really interesting. But the most important thing to remember about when you're using games and when you use it as a TV person or while you're using TV as a games person, because I speak to people from both perspectives, is that TV shows tell stories. There's like, here, we have a story we want you to tell. Sit down, be quiet just for a little while, and we will entertain you and marvel you, and you will adore this, and it'll be brilliant. Whereas what games want you to do is you to make your own story. They're always very... whilst games do try and tell stories, generally speaking, they're not very powerful at doing that. Not many people can talk about the story of a game in any great detail. Some can, but rarely. It's not why people play games. The stories that people can definitely tell you about them playing games is about them playing games. It's about what happened in the game they played. It's about how they were doing fucking shit. They were just that far away from dying, and then they did exactly the right move, and they completely destroyed their opponent, and they're still laughing about it 3 years later. Those are the kind of... It's that creation of stories and that enabling of things that which makes games much more, well, to me, interesting as a story creation medium than as a storytelling medium. But one thing that games will never, ever be able to do, which TV does for free, is have people in them. Because games just don't have people. The fact that you can have George Clooney, the fact you can have whoever the hell is in your TV show turn up. If we had someone from, if Simon Cowell just walked across right now, everybody would be like, holy fuck, it's Simon Cowell. Because we all know that human being. And games are never, ever going to be able to do that. I know everyone run over time, but you stole loads of it at the beginning, so I'm going to nick a minute. Yeah. There is one thing I think that's particularly useful in terms of how games are made, which TV can definitely learn from and definitely use, which is definitely relevant specifically to this idea of building community. Good. And that is iteration. Mm-hmm. Because, as you've said, you kind of like, reacting very, very quickly is difficult, but the concept that you come up with a TV format, kind of born, and go like, this is the format, now we're going to make it, and now we're going to put it out there, is absolutely not how games are made. And it's absolutely not how TV has to be made. It doesn't have to be made like that. I mean, TV does already iterate to some degree. If you watch one series of The X Factor, then from show to show, they will make small changes, make certain sections longer, give people prominence, on and so forth. They will iterate and react to how people are consuming the content. But building that in as an idea of how you actually make a show from the ground up, start with the smallest, tiniest possible iteration of what your thing is and show it to the smallest audience you possibly can, see what they think about it, make a slightly more ambitious version of this format, and sort of let the format develop in response directly to how your audience are actually taking it on board and actually using it, is exactly how games have to be made. And it feels very much like how TV can create communities and learn from games.
Well, it's good that you ended on iteration, because that's exactly right? I mean, one of the things that's interesting about what you were talking about as well is that, you have to iterate. I mean, you listen, as you say. You're not just producing content and it sticks up on a shelf forever. You're actually trying to listen to your audience. I mean, is that really, I guess, the big takeaway of this new world? In the old days in TV, library channels were considered the be-all and end-all. You take product, you just put it up there again and again and again. Syndication's still a huge business. But now, we're in a different world, so...
I guess there's two kind of different data points that we talked about when we started the business. So we were almost just a little over 5 years old as a company, and the first data point was the home shopping channel. And a friend of a friend kind of, I guess, owns this behemoth called the home shopping channel, and what's really cool is they iterate the products on there very, very quickly. Right. So if stuff sells,
doesn't sell, they move it.
They shuffle it off, and if it does sell, then they bring it back. And I've, for my sins, never watched the home shopping channel. I'm sticking by that. You can check my credit card statements. But what I do really like about that is the idea that it's really quite iterative in its approach. And I think that idea of having a studio that can swap in and out talent, which is basically product, in real time is quite an initiative. And so if we think from the 50s to the 90s, soap operas changed from pushing product to being product. It's actually quite cool. And I think that maybe that was a lead point for us. The other lead point, unbeknownst to us, was social gaming was starting. So if we look at Zynga and the many other companies like that, they build 30% of the game and they build it for a market in like Singapore and Thailand.
Right.
And then as that market tests, Scandi, and they test it in these non-core markets. They're still valuable markets, but they're non-core. Also, they're much more social markets, so
And they
people
can
comment
tweak
much
it.
more quickly.
And they can tweak
Not
it.
only do they tweak, but they go into a market that's more likely to comment, create community. So if there's negativity, their sensitivity goes much quicker.
yeah.
So they can learn faster. And then when they launch it into a mega market, they have a refined product. And they know, on your 4th iteration of planting seeds, they should offer you a cowboy hat.
Right.
Not only a cowboy hat, but if you planted this type of seed, it should be a purple cowboy hat.
This is Farmville, right?
Could be.
Yeah.
Not only a purple cowboy hat, but they should charge you 50p for it.
Right.
So it's a pricing decision, it's a product decision, it's a timing decision, and that is what media really is.
Right. Okay, now, I'm going to open it up to the community, see if they want to iterate or ask questions. So if we could pull the lights up. Does anybody have a question for these guys? I can keep talking to them, but if you have a question, this is your moment. Do you want to ask about how to make online content, how to engage community with online content, with videos? I can't see a thing. Yep, any hands at all? Yell at me if I'm not seeing you. No, no, no? All right, so I'll ask you another question. If you think of something, do this. Or say something. Say, Kate. Kate, yeah. the thing for me, it's like, how much does it cost to do it this way? Because the TV world has always been about, we build something that we've tested, we've done focus groups, da, 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 da. If you do it like this, if you iterate like this, it's just a lot less expensive. It's a lot better. You can actually...
Yeah. Why would you focus group when you can just? Why don't focus group just make something very cheaply and see what people think? I mean, there's a big letting go of the idea that everything has to be perfectly high quality is very, very difficult. I mean, there's an enormous tradition of the shiny floor game show, big Saturday
Maybe
night
that's
things,
it. It's
so
a
on and so forth.
quality question. We get stuck on
Exactly.
quality. Yeah.
But it's
Because is
stories,
your
it's
stuff
not about quality, are they?
stories are more important than quality, maybe
Yeah,
in this
exactly.
space entirely. I mean, when
That's
you
why
do, you
YouTube
say you're
works at all,
doing like
surely.
6 channels, 8 channels are in production at a moment. You're doing this royal channel. I mean, what kind of quality are you putting into that? I mean,
Well, clearly it's low quality. That's what we pride ourselves on.
Low budget,
no, but
not
you
low
know what I
quality.
mean. Low
surely,
budget.
isn't
I
that
mean,
the point,
is it
What's interesting is we started from a place that where we licensed almost 3 million hours of archive content. And so what we did is we took the best content professionally produced in the world, like the moon landing, JFK speeches, Muhammad Ali finest moments, etc.
Right.
And we got right of edit to it. So we start with a pristine raw material.
Oh, great.
And then we hand pick according to the community feedback and kind of commentary in the world at that time. So Margaret Thatcher dying, for example, we would have tens of thousands of clips of hers. And then we have right of edit to that because we have trusted partners. And we can bring together that content with context in a way that's edited towards the community. So you end up with a high quality product that's hitting just at the right moment in time.
Lionel Messi versus Margaret Thatcher.
I'm not sure it'd be a fair contest.
But I mean, given that she's just died, I mean, is this the kind of thing that you can actually turn around a channel quickly and put that content up? Because this is the moment. I mean, she's...
So on that example, we would hope to have channels where she'd be relevant. So in the case of top 10s, we might do top 10 Thatcher moments. Or top 10...
Have you done it yet or not?
I've been here, so I
Right.
personally have not done much since I've arrived here.
Well, no, I know,
I'm going
but
to pride
I mean-
myself on that.
Right. But have you said to base?
Home
Hello,
base,
base?
Home base doesn't listen to me anymore.
All
They
right.
listen to the community. So if the community's interested in it, then yes, we would have produced that. But the idea that there's lots of things happening now, and some can be calendared out, and other things can be story arced, other things fit within a theme, but then there's just events that happen over time. But the idea is you start from a place that the content is of high quality, because if it's not, then you're building a community that can basically just get ripped apart when good stuff does come.
Okay. Is there any questions at all, or should we let these guys go to the... Oh, there's one. There's one there. I see a hand. Good heavens. Can you... is there a mic coming? Just wave your hand again so they can find you. There you go.
A lot of work from the lady with the mic for a very short question, actually.
Go ahead.
Hi, my name is Patou. I'm from Ogilvy. Just
Hi.
interested in, and I'm sorry I forgot your name, but I do know the name of your product, which is AMP. I was just wondering about your business model, actually. How do you guys make money? Is that by applying what you've learned for brands and content producers and things like that, or do you have something within the content model itself that's making you the bucks?
Yeah, I'm just getting prompted to sell Ogilvy hard. The way we make money is we're a traditional producer of engaging content, and then advertisers attach via pre-roll onto that primarily. So most of our ads for the first 3 or 4 years were from P&G and car manufacturers, because primarily our traffic was coming and money was coming out of the US. As that shifted slightly, we now work with some fast-moving consumer groups, but primarily, I mean, our ads are sold by the platforms we put our content on, so MSN, Yahoo, YouTube, and
So
AOL.
they commission you, the platforms commission you?
No, we, out of the goodness of our heart,
You
take
just-
risk.
You do it and take risks, and you get the advertising.
And we have tens of
And they
millions of
sell
views.
the advertising for you.
Yeah. So
You
what we
share
want to do
revenue
is
shares.
create enough audience that would become impactful to brands, and then those brands, when they're looking at decks from any of those platforms, say, gee, I really want to be part of that brand. And we're lucky enough that we have enough viable audience of the right demographic that brands come to us all the time. So that's business model 1. Business model 2 would be producers of content, so TV producers primarily, sometimes film, who say to us, hey, we're thinking about making this, could we make it together? So we could co-produce that, and we might charge them a fee for managing their channel, i.e. building audience for what they see as a piece of IP that they want to go big, so that they can collect some ad dollars. The third model, and we've just started on this, is we have 2 channels we've built exclusively for brands, and I actually believe that this is an opportunity that's going to be absolutely huge. I mean, if you open up magazines in the UK, it'll say Rolex, find us on YouTube. Doesn't even have their URL anymore. And the idea that what we've done with our current 2 clients, which are 2 of the bigger clients worldwide, is build channels for them. And those channels have now become the 2nd largest traffic drivers globally to those brands.
Which
So
are they?
I can't tell you.
You can't tell me the brands?
I can't tell you the brands.
So they're out there and they're live, but they don't tell the world.
They have YouTube channels.
it's you.
I can't say that we're the people who are helping
Doesn't
them.
that piss you off?
You know, lots of things piss me off. It's a big world.
Okay. So you think that's a big business model going forward? More branded channels? Yeah.
Absolutely huge.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, interesting. Okay. Well, listen, this has been interesting. I hope you got something out of that. Could you please join me in thanking our 2 speakers, Matt and Mark?